Fair enough. So with that, we will move into our main topic, which is our, could you call it a cold take on Series 12? I don't know what the opposite...
Cold case, Dave.
I don't know what the opposite of a hot take is, but whatever the opposite is, this is it. Look, we've said before, when we do our hot takes, literally, we have just watched the episode, sometimes as much as 10 minutes ago, and we're just giving you our off-the-top thoughts. We've tried to avoid what others have said. We've tried to avoid what's happened on social media. We certainly don't know what each other thought. So they are very unformed and unplanned, and this is a chance to go back and add in some more thoughts and some more depth here and there, some points we've missed, but also look at the series holistically. And to open, before we even get into what we sort of thought of the series as a whole, I just want to make the point that this has been a really fascinating series to be part of as a fan. On the one hand, there's been so much positivity. I've really enjoyed being a fan of Doctor Who in the last 10, 11 weeks. I've enjoyed the podcasts that I've listened to about it. I've enjoyed a lot of the interaction about it. There's been lots of positivity. There's been some really interesting debates. It's been really fun and positive to watch. Unfortunately, of course, the haters are still out there. And what I've found, Rob, and I'm interested in your thoughts on this, is that whilst I've really kind of just avoided the haters to the best extent possible, I don't go and watch their YouTube videos. I don't add them on Twitter. I have found myself sometimes being very cautious about my opinion when I have a negative opinion on an aspect of the show, because I don't want to be in the haters category.
Yeah, and look, I felt like that last series as well, Dave, to be honest, because I was out there watching the haters videos on YouTube because I wanted to see what people were saying in their totality, just as I go out and listen to more podcasts while a new series is on than I normally would, more Doctor Who podcasts, that is. I also, stretch my wings and get out there and see what the haters are saying. Quite how crazy can they go? What are their beefs? And some of them are very persuasive because they use facts and they speak well, and you think, ooh, this person's got a point. Oh my God, what am I thinking? But then there are others who are just stone cold crazy. So yeah, it runs the gamut out there. And I've forgotten what your question was now, as I sort of got wrapped up in myself.
I guess I'm making the point that you can be critical of an episode or a performance, or even a doctor sometimes, and not be in the category of a hater, which is just, I've tuned in to actively dislike this show. Let's face it, in some cases they have monetized their hatred, particularly on YouTube.
Yes.
They've worked out that they can get a certain audience, therefore they get YouTube money, etc., etc. And sometimes I have found that I have softened or been wary about giving a negative opinion because I just don't want to be part of that toxicity, and maybe I've been a bit too cautious.
Well, I think about myself, and by you by association, because you do the show with me. I look and I think, God, that episode we panned. Now, if we did that every week, I might start to think, ooh, are people going to think we're haters? But then when we bounce back the next week and say, this episode was fantastic, I'm giving MVP of the week to Chris Chibnall, it was 9 out of 10. I think anyone with eyes, or ears rather, could determine that, no, those guys aren't haters. If they hated the show, they wouldn't be giving Chris Chibnall MVP of the week, which I did once or twice this series, or giving shows 9 out of 10. Then if we go and do that was 6 out of 10, I hated that. I think people will understand that that's not what we think about the show broadly. So that's where I think our line in the sand is we just say what we think, and we just don't hate every week.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I guess sometimes you're just wary of, I think, trolling into that because it's become such a toxic thing in that corner of fandom. You just don't want to be part of it. But look, that said, Rob, Series 12, 10 episodes, it's all come and gone. What's your view of the season?
Look, on face value, I think Series 12 has the veneer of making a great leap forward from Series 11. Yet, when you scratch the surface like we did on the show, I think a lot of the problems of Series 11 are still there. Which is not to say that I didn't think the episodes were better. They were. We'll probably get to our marks later and whether we've reevaluated any. So I'm overall happier with it and do think it's better than Series 11. but I don't think it's as good because a lot of issues are still there.
That's interesting. I will say right from the start, I have enjoyed the series. I've enjoyed it certainly a lot more than last series. I think it was a lot better than last series. Have I enjoyed it as much as a couple of the RTD ones? No. Have I enjoyed it as much as Peter Capaldi's last series? No. So it's not up there as sort of a top 2 or 3 New Who series for me. But it is a series that I have enjoyed. There are no episodes in there that I absolutely loathe, which is a big step up from last series where there were 3 or 4 I just thought were complete write-offs, complete waste of time. And there were a couple in there that I was, really excited about. But most of all, it has been more exciting. It's had more monsters. It's been more fun. And that's a really positive thing. Now, I do think that the reputation of this season is going to be massively overshadowed by the last episode. I think the last episode, whether you like it or dislike it or have issues with it or don't have issues with it or whatever, the last episode reaches back through the season and will really cloud, influence, skew views of it. And I also think that Mr. Exposition has been a very unwelcome visitor for many episodes this season, and that is a problem that needs to be dealt with.
Well, this is what I mean about it still having the issues of Series 11. Exposition, Chibnall's apparently never heard of Show Don't Tell. Great swathes of each episode of people just standing around explaining the storyline to each other. It is mind-blowing that he gets away with this. And a close cousin of that is the heavy-handed writing. Whereas in the past in Doctor Who, because people now on social media, if you notice this, Dave, they love to say, Doctor Who has always been political. Doctor Who has always tackled these tough issues. As if we never knew that. Yes, we know. But it's the way it did it is what's important, not the fact that it's doing it. Nowadays, we have the Doctor just about turning to camera and explaining to us why what's going on screen is a bad thing. Hey kids, come in closer. Plastics, they're not good, are they? No. And it's like, oh my God, just show it. Don't tell it. Again, it's a very close cousin of exposition, this heavy-handed writing he indulges in. And it happened in Series 11, it happened here. So yes, while it was better, we had our Cybermen, we had the Master, we had Gallifrey, we had Jadoon, for God's sake, and that made it feel a bit more comfortable, a bit more adventure-y and monsters, and yay, there were still these fundamental issues there from Series 11. Chris Chibnall, my God, what are you doing?
Yeah, agree with all of that, but overall a positive experience.
Yes.
So on that, given we're about to dive in, shall I give you my sort of 2 minutes each on episodes 9 and 10?
Oh, yes, please.
So episode 9, Ascension of the Cybermen. I look back on this with a very fond regard. I thought that it was a good adventure action episode. And as I look back on it, 2-3 weeks now since it was broadcast, the things that sit in my memory are the really cool moments. The stuff with that first battle between the Doctor, her companions, and the Cybermen. I still think that those cyber probes were just laughably badly executed, but that is less an issue now than it was 2 minutes after you watch it when you're still laughing. I thought that the sense of doom and the impending sense of awfulness pervaded the episode in a really effective way. I thought the Cybermen were very good. The design was very good. There were real stakes. I was wondering what was going to happen. I thought Koshamus was going to turn out to be a bad guy, and I was like, watch out for that guy, this is going to be a trap. And
wow.
So that was really interesting to me. They split off in a really interesting sort of way. Yeah, there were some duff moments, but it all ended with suddenly, the Master's back, and I'm like, wow, we've got the Cybermen, we've got Nami, we've got the last vestiges of humanity, and we've got the Master. This is set up for a great finale. I will say, though, I'm still not quite sure what was actually happening in terms of, are these literally the last 6 humans left anywhere ever, or is this all that's left of one colony, or is this just a particular group of stragglers? I'm not quite sure. And if it was meant to be literally the last 6 humans left alive after the Cyberman War, that's a pretty massive sort of thing that really, really wasn't sold.
I think it's one of those statements, though, like when we say Luke Skywalker was the last Jedi, back in A New Hope. I refuse to believe that that was the case. I think it's just broadly, these are the last ones we sort of know of, but I'm sure there are other humans out there somewhere.
Yeah, look, I hope so, because if not, we've just wiped out humanity by taking them back to the past. So, which brings me on to episode 10, which I'm much less positive about.
Yeah.
There were positive things in there. I enjoyed Sacha Dhawan being completely and utterly crazy, and very charismatic while doing it. There were a couple of nice set pieces in there. The moment when the companions are hiding inside the cyber suits, for example. The battle on the planet with the Cybermen. All of those sort of things in that first third to first half gave me enough action adventure to keep me going. Unfortunately, for the most part, I was bored. There was a lot of Jodie standing around having things explained to her at length. Then there are lots of climatic scenes that were people standing around talking at each other.
Yes.
And that, unfortunately, even though it was intermixed with some action and excitement, the middle third to second half really wasn't. It was just lots of urgently talking. And then you get the really bunkum stuff that comes in there, like the death particle just coming out of nowhere for no apparent reason. Whilst I did think that the death of the lone Cyberman was a cool, wow, they went there moment for about 30 seconds, then you're like, so what was the point?
Yeah.
I thought that the lone Cyberman's plan to make them all robots wasn't just rubbish, but having the Master go, that's a really rubbish, stupid idea. You go, yeah, it is! Like when the Master's agreeing with you. And that's it. You premise, yeah, that's a problem. The resolution was, I think, not what it should have been. Yes, the spectacular thing of the cyber ship exploding over the ruins of the Citadel, that's a great image. That's going to be an iconic image of the show. Positive there. But what should have been a real landing moment of defining Jodie Whittaker's Doctor, a moral conundrum of I can do this or I can't do this. It never landed in the way that Do I Have the Right did for Tom, or the way that a similar scene did for Christopher Eccleston in his last episode. I think there should have been an alternative there. Part of me wondered, had it been Graham who sacrificed himself, that would have been pretty phenomenal and pretty powerful. And then I thought, well, what if at the end of Can You Hear Me, Graham's comment to the Doctor was that his cancer had returned. And then I thought that's actually too dark for the show to sort of have gone down, and I still think it would have been pretty cool, but no, too dark, shouldn't have done that. But I feel like there should have been something else. So the Brendan stuff that was in Ireland, that was really interesting and engaging and intrigued me in Ascension of the Cybermen, lots of points, and then it was kind of just like a screensaver that kind of got brushed away. So much of the setup didn't land for me. I was bored for too much of it, so it was a very weak finale for me.
Yeah, look, just to talk of that Ireland stuff and Brendan, it set up so much in the first episode that this is important. Look at this. Oh, gosh, he's falling off a cliff. Chris Chibnall's gone back to Broadchurch where someone falls off a cliff. Isn't this amazing? And it's got me thinking, what's going on here? This kid, he's grown up and he's become an old man, but his dad is still young, and the old police sergeant is still there, and oh, God. And then it becomes, as you say, just like one brief scene in amongst all these other scenes, and it's like, well, what is it actually meant to mean? That was the Doctor, but why were they torturing him? For what reason? Why had they remained young? What? Just mind-blowing. What was the whole point of it? The final episode made me annoyed in several ways. That Ireland thing and just squibbing on, actually telling a decent story around it was one example. That it actually did flow back through the series and bring me down a bit overall. I thought we were really heading somewhere. This could be really good if he lands it, and he hasn't landed it.
So, that being the case, Rob, I'm going to push you for a yes or no answer first off for this, and then obviously we'll discuss it.
Okay.
In this series, Chibnall has clearly tried to introduce what we would call an arc. Similar to what Moffat and RTD did in some series, kind of a Blake 7, Babylon 5, DS9 type arc. Did it work?
My answer is yes and no.
No, I'm going to push you, Rob, which you can qualify it in your comments, but overall, yes or no?
All right. I will qualify that in my comments. I would say yes.
I'm the same. I will have a heavy qualification in my comments, but overall, I'm going to say yes. The arc aspects of this series, I think, unquestionably added to the excitement and enjoyability of the series.
Now can I qualify it?
Please.
Okay, so my answer, Dave, was yes and no. Because, yes, from the point of view that it looped around, it told a story, and there's obviously more to come, too, what this shady group on Gallifrey was up to, where the Ruth Doctor fits in. Yeah, I know there's more to come.
Yeah, where Lenny Henry goes.
Oh, well... Or if he does, or if they're just going to let that go. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yes, there was an arc of sorts. It worked in terms of the narrative, but did it work for me personally? No, it didn't. Because this is what I'm saying. Up until that last episode, I was saying, this is good. I hope he pulls it off. So it kept me strung along, which is great, which is working. You know, the arc's doing just fine, but then it didn't land. And I was left a bit meh and a bit, why are we even going there? And so the arc fell apart for me personally, but yes, it worked overall.
Look, I broadly agree with you. I'll use some different examples, though. As I just said, I think that it definitely added to the excitement of the show. Having the Master turn up in the first episode and really being set up to come back added a sense of anticipation that was really good. Lenny Henry, again, I think his character was really good. He was one of the best aspects of the series. And he was left open as to when he's coming back. Having Jack suddenly coming, having the Ruth Doctor introduced, and sort of all those questions about what is this, how's this going to happen, I thought was really exciting, and it did add to my enjoyment and anticipation of the series. I was more excited about what happens in the next episode because of wanting to know how it all played out. So that is a positive. I agree with you, though. I don't think a lot of it landed as well as it should. Now, I fully expect that the Ruth Doctor and the Jack stuff surely has to be incomplete. We're going to see more of that. If that's not the case, that's really poor.
Yeah.
But I think we will. I think the Lone Cyberman really sums up a lot of what the problem was here, because I don't think the payoff was remotely worth the setup. When Jack came back, so something as phenomenal and as important as a iconic integral character to a part of the show coming back to give a warning, that to me is a big deal. Like, this isn't just you know the woman on the bus who sort of says, he will knock 4 times. She's just a random character who's coming to give you a bit of this is Captain Jack coming back, so this is as big an arrow pointing to this as you can have, saying this is a big deal. And he says, beware the Lone Cyberman, do not give it what it wants, there will be consequences. So the Lone Cyberman turns up, and he's lone in the sense that he doesn't have any friends, which is kind of not quite the epic thing that I was expecting of it, but okay. And then Jodie does make the decision to give him what he wants, which I think did work in the episode. That whole concept of the needs of the one outweigh the needs of the many is an important concept in morality. It's something that's been explored in science fiction, Star Trek 2 and 3 particularly, obviously. But that's an important part of Doctor Who. The Doctor would say, no, I'm not making a numerical calculation. One life is worth saving.
Yeah.
But at that point, she's done what Jack said not to do. And to me, there was no consequence of that.
Correct.
There was no moment where the Doctor had to pay a price because she'd made this decision. The Cyberium actually doesn't really play much of a role other than the Lone Cyberman saying, the Cyberium said to do this. He then gets killed in that was a very cool moment, but you suddenly go, well, if he's that dispensable, why did any of this matter? Why did the Cyberium matter? Jodie doesn't lose anything, or I should say the Doctor doesn't lose anything for not doing what Jack said. And that to me makes the whole thing kind of a damp squib. The Master creating those absurd looking cyber thingies. Now, and look, unless they all escaped with the Master at the end when he did his whole, quick, come with me, guys. Look, maybe I'm underselling it. But again, to create these things, give them a bizarre, wacky costume, and then just talk about it for 10 minutes and then destroy them with the plot device of the day, who cares? So that's interesting. We haven't got to, and we will get to the Doctor Ruth Time Lord revelation stuff. But that to me is a big disappointment of the series.
Yeah, look, I said that I liked the Cyber Lords as they were, because they were just so weird looking and such a crazy idea. But I think it would have worked much better if he'd gone and kidnapped some Time Lords and had them converted, and then marched into Gallifrey and said to the existing Time Lords, look, here's the future of your race, our race, look what I've done to us. I think that would have been far more shocking than him just resurrecting some in a destroyed Gallifrey and saying to the Doctor, oh, look what I did here. You know, I think that could have been a much bigger moment, and you don't even have to destroy Gallifrey to do that. You can have this big cyber war thing going on, have him march in at the last minute with these guys, and the Time Lords would just be like, oh my god, wow.
Or if they arrive before the fall of Gallifrey, and the Cyberium is the thing that allows the Master and the Cybermen to destroy Gallifrey.
Yes.
There's a price, or if there's a setback in the war, or a colony's destroyed, or something. I think back to Babylon 5, where when Londo Malari is told, if you don't do these things, there will be a consequence. Well, you see the fall of Centauri Prime, that is the consequence of his actions, and he pays a personal price for that. I think you... Look, I'm just going to start repeating myself. I don't think the payoff was worth the epic, certainly in that part of the arc, which is a shame, because it was, I think, overall exciting.
A thought to end with here, which might excite you a great deal when you think about it. Is K9 still on Gallifrey, and being non-organic, does that mean he's now in charge of Gallifrey?
That's quite a cool thought. I guess he must be, and I don't know. Maybe he was destroyed in the Time War. Sacrificed himself nobly in the Time War. Who knows? But look, if we are doing sort of little continuity bits, I have enjoyed the stuff on social media about the fact that Tom Baker's caretaker is obviously a little bit of a bastard to Matt Smith's Doctor, where he's like, Gallifrey foes no more, for a couple of years, and it all gets wiped out.
I love it.
So, we intimated before that we hadn't got to what I guess we could call the canon stuff. Shall I go first, or should you go first on this one?
Yeah, please, Dave, go first.
Okay. I think that we need to split the big revelations of the Timeless Children into a couple of factors and make a couple of points, and I'll make them quickly. One is simply that I am not particularly fussed or fazed by anything that happened in this episode. I'm really not. My copy of An Unearthly Child and the Daleks and the Darwin Solar Invasion and the Androids of Tara are completely unchanged and still as wonderful, because they've done something a bit different with continuity. I'm completely unfazed by it at all. And in fact, Chibnall has done it in a way very similar to what Moffat did with the War Doctor, where he said, look, if you want to only count the numbered doctors, you're free to do that. If you want to count the War Doctor as well, you can do that too. It's kind of up to you. Chibnall's kind of done it in that way. I don't think anything that we saw particularly changed canon. I don't think it rewrote what we knew about the Time Lords or the Doctor. It simply added to it, so I'm kind of fine in that sense. Do I like the idea of doctors before this Doctor? Not really. But I don't care that much. As I say, it doesn't change anything for me. Do I think that all the revelations that it took half an hour to talk about Tactayan or the Aztec named woman, and that was kind of interesting, but I wasn't that excited by it. It wasn't as interesting as what they could have done with the Cybermen, but I didn't care. The one thing that I did care about was making the Doctor the Timeless Child. I'm not tearing my hair out, I'm not burning my DVDs, I'm not having rants on social media about it. I don't care that much. I really don't. But to me, part of the magic of the Doctor is that he was just another Time Lord who got bored, who didn't want to watch and not interfere. He wanted to interfere. He wanted to explore the universe firsthand. He doesn't want to read about civilizations in a book or through the Matrix. He wants to go there, and he wants to experience a civilization, and he wants to learn by doing. And in part of that, he learns that sometimes you have to fight evil and you have to interfere, and there is a moral rightness that comes from that. And I think that's a wonderful thing. The Doctor being a special or godlike or mythic chosen one style character for me isn't what I like about the character. I think it's a very, very boring thing. It's like the difference between Luke Skywalker starting off being just a farm boy who gets caught up in all this, and then you kind of find out that actually, like, he's part of a lineage. You go, that's not quite as exciting, but I get it, because the whole point of the Star Wars saga is he was the chosen one. I said in a review of the last Star Wars, I liked Rey more when she was just a random person who got caught up in stuff and had to do good, and then she becomes another scion. I don't like that. I don't like it in Doctor Who. I don't like it elsewhere. You know, as I say, I'm not fussed about it, because whatever. The stories I enjoy are still just as enjoyable, but I just think it's a dumb move.
Yeah. Well, look, there's two things to unpack there, so let's pause and I'll return serve on them. Working backwards, the Doctor is the timeless child. I thought it would be far more interesting if it wasn't the Doctor.
Yeah.
Because not only does it preserve some mystery, which is what you're talking about, let's keep the Doctor mysterious, but we also get into this territory that Stephen was talking about on our Hot Take episode, which was, consider that Gallifrey exists because they grabbed this kid, this alien kid, and killed them over and over and over and over. And that's really dark. That's a great story. And it's not explaining anything about the background of the Doctor that we don't want to hear. So it's a win-win. A great story and not explaining about the Doctor. Why couldn't we have gone in that direction?
Yeah, or if some vault under the Eye of Harmony, this child was chained up and her energy being used to fuel all regenerations of all Time Lords or something. That would have been a very interesting sort of thing. And just to go off for a very tiny tangent there, again, I didn't buy why the Master was so pissed off by it. No. You know, there was that line in there about, now I've got a piece of you inside me, and it's like, yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Okay. But I for all of Sasha's wonderful performance, I wasn't sold on, like, this is so bad.
Yeah. Oh, look, I hear you. And to talk about Doctors pre-Hartnell, personally, I think it's dumb. I'm going to go for it here, Dave. I see why they're doing it.
Yeah.
You know, I absolutely see why they're doing it. And, you know, at the stroke of a pen, they can now say that the Doctor has been every sex, presumably every sexuality, every colour, every race. And isn't that marvellous? And on face value, sure it is. Absolutely.
And let me just add there, I did the maths. And if you assume that the Doctor's comment about 10 million years of absolute power is accurate, and you assume that the age Troughton gives in Tomb of being about 450 years, and that the first Doctor basically, you know, regenerated because of old age, that allows for just over 22,000 incarnations.
Geez, that puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it?
Because, you know, look, this doing it at the stroke of a pen, I just find cheap and nasty, rather than doing the hard yards on screen and bringing on more men and women and sexualities, if that's even needed in Doctor Who, and colours. Rather than doing that in the future, Chibnall's like, yeah, the Doctor was always all of this, you know, and it might delight Big Finish with the possibilities. They can now make Doctor Who with anyone, and it's canon, presumably. But honestly, I don't think it was needed. Doctor Who is what it is, and if a showrunner wants to change the future, have at it. But changing the past, I'm less down with. Even if the Doctor doesn't remember being people before Hartnell, I still think it detracts from Hartnell because it just does. But I'm honestly reaching an age where I can't rage about it. I just shake my head and move on and think, oh, well, you know, we'll have a new showrunner announced in the next year or so. It is what it is.
Yeah, and look, at the end of the day, when it comes to episode 1 of Series 13 in 18 months' time, presumably the Doctor will just go off and have another adventure, and this will all kind of be irrelevant. So, you know, who cares? As I say, it's not the decision I would have made, and I think there are more exciting things they could have done with it.
A bit more imagination. It could have been wonderful.
Yeah, look, that's true. However, that said, I was thinking about this, and I thought, okay, as you said, Rob, we're at a certain age. You know, we average out to, you know, an age somewhere in the early 40s, I think. And that's fine. You know, we came to Doctor Who through the classic series, we grew up with it, and the new series is sort of something that's come to us in our adult life. And I thought, but if you're somebody who is the age now that I was when I was watching Babylon 5, that sort of middle to late high school, and then it finished in my first year of university, I think. That sort of teenage years when I watched Babylon 5, and every revelation was amazing and deep inside the soul and revelationary, and it was such a big deal. I was bought into that. And I thought, if you're a teenager now who is watching Doctor Who, so you probably came to the show, maybe you were watching when you were 5 in 2005, or more likely you've come to it at some point, and this is your version of Doctor Who. This is your show. You might have watched some classic, or you might not have, but this is your show and you're invested.
Yeah,
I think that these revelations would have been mind-blowing in the same way that Babylon 5 was for us. And I checked out a few Twitter feeds and a few online videos. Who Figure Adventures I've tweeted out before a couple of times. There's a youngish guy who does some really great hot takes on YouTube of Doctor Who. And yeah, absolutely. I think this stuff was a big revelation for many of those people of that age. So I think that it did land maybe for people who are more invested than we are, because it is the right place in their life for it, and I'm very cool with that.
Yeah, look, I think you're right, because, I think back to other shows I've watched and they've hit me at the right time, and I think, that was right, and then other shows that I never watched when I was young and I watch them now, I probably don't have the same reactions that I would have had when I was a younger person. So I totally get you on that, Dave. At the start of this episode, you were talking about the dying days and Doctor Who, being a bit more fun than it currently is. And it reminded me of this meme that Spanky Backpack put out just recently. And I jotted it down, actually. Spanky Backpack said, absolutely baffled why anyone would make silly old Doctor Who fight in a war, do unspeakable things, be a slave time agent, or have terrible secret lives. Not everything has to be dark, gritty, or serious. And I think, it does seem for these finales in recent years, Doctor Who's trying to be like, this is the biggest and baddest thing that's ever happened since last time. And it's going down, I don't know, this Marvel movies route or this J.J. Abrams route just to try and be bigger and better and darker. And it's like, do we really need to go there? I don't know.
I don't like that it's going there, but you asked, do we need to go there? And I think there is an argument that after 38 series of the show, maybe you do. Can you just give us Adventure of the Week every week for 38 years? Maybe not. I think you do have to try something different, and you do have to up the stakes. And so I do get it, even if it's not quite what I would do.
But does it have to centre on the Doctor? And this is where we come back to that question about, could the Timeless Child have been chained up under Gallifrey and be an incredibly dark, awful thing, but it's not telling you more about the Doctor?
No, or do you suddenly make the Cybermen bigger and badder and more epic than, frankly, they've ever been on the screen, and they kind of were going down that path and going, no, we're not.
Yeah.
There are other ways you can do it, I think, which is not to detract from the fact that a lot of the moments were really, really good. Spyfall was great. The Master was great. Some of the cyber stuff was great. Future of the Jadoon was amazing. I love the Ruth Doctor. She's a great. I want to see more of her. So we've I guess, smashed pretty comprehensively those aspects of the arc we didn't like. But this comes back to what I said very early in the episode about how much we perhaps shouldn't let the legacy of the Timeless Children overshadow the other 9 episodes in that series. I think that would be very, very unfair to the series. But it is such a big deal that we can't probably help from letting that happen a bit.
Oh, I agree, and we'll get to our scores and see if they've changed a little later. But a few other things to talk about, Dave. Probably the fam, the Doctor, and bringing back lots of old stuff. I know we've jotted this down to talk about. Where do you want to start?
Look, let's go with the fam, because this is probably a bit of a negative for me, and the Doctor's probably a bit of a positive for me, so spoilers. So I think that's a good order to do them in. In a moment, I think we're both going to talk about how much we've enjoyed Jodie Whittaker this series, particularly compared to last. That's a very positive thing, but to the detriment of the companions. In 42 to 50 minutes of television, there are only so many moments, only so many lines. I've said this before. And by giving the Doctor more, that's great, but you have given the companions less. By adding so many companions, they've almost made Doctor Who an ensemble cast. Now, An ensemble cast works in something like Blake 7 or Star Trek, where this week's the Data episode, and this week's the Deanna episode, and Gan doesn't get an episode, but this week's, Villa and Avon get an episode. That works. Unfortunately, in Doctor Who, well, it's in the title. You can't not have an episode that's about the Doctor unless you have one of the very rare once a season, Doctor Light episodes, which are such a big deal. We've invented a term for them. We call them Doctor Light episodes. Doctor Who is not an ensemble show. It's a show with a lead and then other co-leads. And when you have two, you can make them pretty close to equal, as Moffat particularly really did with Clara and Amy. And even RTD, I guess, with Rose in some ways. But doing it with 4 just hasn't worked. Look, for all of the attempts to talk Yaz up and give us some moments, Yaz, I still really don't know her. I think she's a bit of a contradiction, whatever. Ryan, I kind of like. I like Tosin Cole. I think his performance is very charming. What did he do this series? Not much. Again, some nice moments that Tosin made very, very charismatic, but not much. Graham, who was a big revelation. I think a lot of fandom loved Graham in Series 11 and have enjoyed him in Series 8, but I think about how many episodes where Graham sort of had like 4 lines and, 3 of them were, "What's that do, Doctor? I don't get it." And the other was, here's Graham's heartfelt line for the series, because Graham does those really, really well.
Yeah.
It was kind of family by formula. I think that it's good that the Doctor got more, but it has come at their expense. 4 in the TARDIS crew has not worked. Lovely moments, but so underused. Bradley Walsh, particularly, I think was really underused this series.
Yeah, I'll go very briefly over this because you've already said so much, Dave, about what I would have said. I think the Davison era proved comprehensively that a 3-companion TARDIS team might have worked okay-ish at times back in the 60s, but it was tough work by the 1980s in that format of the show. And these days...
And in the 1980s, you had usually 4 parts.
Yes.
And in the 60s, you had 6 or 7 parts quite often.
Yes.
Not 40 minutes.
Yeah, because these days, in that even more compressed format, it's just next to impossible for them to do anything of note, especially with these sizable guest casts that we're also getting on top, which is just astounding to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's all I've got to say about the fam.
Well, do you want to lead us then on the Doctor?
Yeah, look, a moment ago, Dave, you said you think we're both going to praise Jodie, and look, I think she did very well, and I gave her an MVP at least once, if not multiple times during the series. So don't get me wrong with what I'm about to say, because I still don't feel I have a good fix on the Doctor's character. We're here at the end of the 2nd series, and yeah, she's generically pleasant. She's often childlike. But what else is she? I know the appearance of some of these old foes and the destruction of Gallifrey gave her something to actually act against during the series, and her performance rose accordingly in those scenes. It became quite interesting in those scenes. That's great, but it's only in those scenes. I still genuinely, absolutely genuinely, not being a hater, genuinely don't know what I'm going to get from story to story with her, outside of she's just generically pleasant and sometimes childlike.
Look, maybe you're looking for too much there.
Maybe.
I'm not going to dismiss what you're saying. I'm not going to disagree with what you're saying in large part, but I'm going to be a bit more positive in that I have gone from being very, very concerned about Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor to having more or less really enjoyed her this series. I think she has had a lot more to do. She's been more of a lead in the stories, which is really good. She has been more involved in the resolution of the stories. She has been more the moral heart of the stories. Jodie's been given a chance to be angry. She's been given a chance to be distant. She has got those moments where she's had to explain to the companions that, we call ourselves the fam, but this is not a flat command structure. You are my companions. That has been, I think, all very positive for her, and I have enjoyed her Doctor this season. I like you, gave her several MVPs. I think she was the best thing in a lot of episodes. Maybe I'm being overly generous because I'm grading on a curve compared to last year. Maybe. But I think she was one of the big positives of the last 10 episodes.
Oh, and look, that's completely fair, because again, I acknowledge she did some good stuff here. Absolutely. And that she was better than last series. Absolutely. So I think we're on the same page, more than not. Yeah, no,
look, I think so. I think that she has been one of the strongest things. I think that it is unfortunate it has come to the detriment of the companions. And so maybe if it is just the Doctor and one or maybe two companions next year, that will really be a chance for Jodie to shine. I think she can do it, and I think given more time as well, she will do it. And maybe her and Yaz will be a really good combination.
Yeah, could be. Although they were getting very testy with each other, maybe that'll resolve itself in the holiday special.
Or maybe that's going to give them both a chance to actually do a bit more acting. And, the idea of the Doctor travelling with somebody who is a bit more wary. I mean, after the stuff that the family has gone through in the last couple of episodes, with the Doctor actively telling them, sorry, your opinion doesn't matter and you don't get to make the decision and this is not a partnership. How does that play out? Is Yaz going to be a bit more jaded and a bit more cynical and questioning the Doctor more, and how does the Doctor react? That could be a very good setup for the next series.
It could, or does it take us into Tegan territory where you just want to say, look, love, if you're not enjoying it, why are you here?
Yeah, look, that's the danger. That is the danger. So, yeah. Look, that will be interesting. I think that a smaller TARDIS team can only be a positive.
Now, look, to round out, we want to talk about, there were lots of old things coming back in this series. There was Cyberman, the Master, Gallifrey, and so on. Did it work, Dave?
Yes, absolutely. This was an exciting season. The Master came back and Sacha Dhawan was brilliant. The Jadoon came back and they were, I think, better than they've been before. Partly because the technology's better, partly I think they were written just so well. Captain Jack came back only for one episode and only in one set, but it was just so fun. The Cyberman came back, new design, some new ideas. Look, I've got mixed thoughts on the Lone Cyberman, but again, a new and different take. Many of the big positives of this season have been seeing old things come back and the Doctor deal with them. This is a big positive for me.
All right, I'll take a slightly different track here. Because I think the old stuff broadly did help the series feel more like Doctor Who, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But when we got to the end and it all became this tricksy stuff about the Doctor not being Gallifreyan and apparently being killed over and over again, so this plucky female explorer who we've never heard of before could work out regeneration. All the while, Rassilon and Omega weren't mentioned at all, which was quite strange, I thought. And the whole thing became about a new background to the Doctor that we don't need to know. I thought in regards to that old stuff, or should we call it new old stuff, because it's old stuff but it's new to us, it was a bit of a bore and unnecessary. And what would the not we be thinking of all this? Like, what's all this going on? This is bizarre. Surely they would be thinking that.
Yeah, look, that's fair enough, and also the references to the Shobogans and to Barusa and
that's right.
Which I don't know whether that was a nice reference or a bit wanky, and I think it probably was a bit wanky. Once again, I'm finding myself making the point about just how big the shadow of the Timeless Children is reaching back over the season. If I asked you that stuff about old monsters and villains coming back at the end of episode 9, would you have had any caveats on your enjoyment of them?
No, I would have said it was coming back, it was a great thing, and I would have left it at that. I wouldn't have got into the not we stuff and all that other stuff.
Exactly, which, I think the shadow of the Timeless Children is a very real thing.
Yeah. As I said to Stephen on the hot take, why are we doing this? Why are we even going here?
Yeah.
Is it needed? And is it going to become a big thing in future series? And if not, then why are we doing it?
Yeah, so look, I always say that what I want from Doctor Who is fun adventures in time and space. 9 out of 10 episodes here really delivered that.
Agree.
And one didn't, but it didn't in such a big way that it is... It's like a black hole. It sort of distorts gravity and light and space around it. And it has, I think, distorted our view of other episodes. Which brings us to the question, Rob. Have you changed your scores for anything? I'll start by saying, have you rewatched many of them?
I haven't. Honestly, I have not. For these hot takes, I watch it once to do the hot take, and then most of them I watched again with my wife. But several of them I didn't watch again because my wife said, I'm just not into this series at all. I've got no interest. Let's not watch it. Let's watch Picard, or let's watch Altered Carbon, or, whatever we've been watching at the time. And I've said, okay. And so I've not actually watched some of them a second time. But in terms of rescoring, I looked down the list and only one score I felt was a bit too high. And that's Fugitive of the Jadoon. I gave it a 9 out of 10, and I want to take that back to an 8.
Ooh.
I think it was just like, oh, we've got this new doctor. Oh, she's quite good at what she does. Oh, this is exciting. This is amazing. And I think I got a bit carried away with the score. Once you take away that revelation and just think about it as a story, it's solid. I'm happy to give it an 8. I just don't think it was a 9. Otherwise, I was very happy with all my scores, which averaged out to be a 7.3 across the series.
Oh, wow. That's not too bad.
Yeah.
Look, I've gone back and watched a number of them from the first sort of half to 2/3 of the series. I've changed my score on 3.
Okay.
I started off giving Spyfall Part 1 an 8. I'm actually bumping that up to an 8.5. I think looking back now, it was a really good opening to the season. It was so fun. It was so exciting. The revelation of the Master was so good. Sacha Dhawan was so good. Letty Henry was so good. I think that I was maybe, being a bit conservative because it's the first episode of the season, so you don't want to give your best score straight away. You want to give room for it to get better, and so I'm just bumping it up to an 8.5. I think it really was a good opener.
Okay.
I ummed and ahed about Orphan 55. I have gone back and watched it a second time. I gave it a 6 the first time. I'm going to stick with a 6. Whilst watching it a second time, again, it is just such a mess. Plot threads just come and go and disappear for no apparent reason. But there is action. There are some really cool monsters. There are some nice ideas in there. So I think a 6 is a balanced score. Although I did flirt with lowering it down. I am going to lower Praxius. I gave it a 6.5. I'm taking a point down and making it a 5.5. Because watching it again, I was again just like, I just don't know what's happening here. It's a mess. It's a visually exciting mess, but it's a mess. So I'm dropping that down to a 5.5. Mm-hmm. I'm dropping Ascension from an 8 to a 7 because I think watching it the second time, knowing what's coming, the Lone Sidemen, all the build up, when you know that it's not going to pay off, it's kind of hard for it to hold up. So I'm dropping that from an 8 to a 7. And Timeless Children, I gave it a 5 at the time. I'm keeping it as a 5.
Okay.
So I started off my averages from my hot takes as a 7.15 out of 10.
Okay.
And my changes have dropped it down to an exact 7 out of 10.
Very good. As I said, mine were a 7.3, and when I took, what did I take down? Fugitive of the Jejune, it went down to a 7.2, so not much of a change there.
No, and overall we're very, very close. But look, my lowest score is a 5, and that's for the Timeless Exposition. I had a number of scores lower than that last year.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And to look at an average of over 7 for me and on 7 for you, 7's not bad. 7's average, and it might explain how we feel about the series overall.
And I know you've lowered it, Rob, but I'm still keeping my 9.5 for Fugitive.
Wow. Okay, so you really liked it.
I really liked it. I think it was just a really exciting. I think that is one that will become a classic. I think Spyfall Part 1 will be known as a classic. And there's some other just really solid adventures in there that I think will hold up very well. I think this has been a very good season, although its problems are big problems.
Biggest disappointment for me here, Dave, you didn't bump up Haunting of Villa Diodati, which remains at 9 for me. I loved it.
Yeah, it's still a 7.5 for me. But I will be honest, I haven't watched that a second time. I haven't had time to. Okay. So, look, if at some point I do and I change it, maybe at some point I'll bring that up as a mini topic or something.
Very good. Shall we go to the sports desk?
One last time. So we are now at the sports desk where for the whole of Series 12 we are giving our play of the series, our foul of the series, and our player of the series. Rob, why don't you kick us off? What was your play of the whole of the last 10 episodes?
Dave, my play of the last 10 episodes is something we've discussed at length earlier here, so I'm happy that we've done that, so I won't have to go on and on about it now. It was having an arc. Just having an arc. You know, compared to Series 11 where it was a bit aimless and not reaching too high, here there was an arc. It was really reaching for it, and until that final episode, and this was something I was saying on Hot Takes, you know, I think I gave an MVP to Chris Chibnall one week saying, look, he's really going for it here, and even if he fails, he's having a crack. This is good. You know, I didn't know how badly he'd crash and burn in the episode after, but at the time, I was like, yes, I'm on board with this. And broadly, I think it was a good thing to do. It made the series feel bigger and more interesting than the one before, and the writing was better too across the board, so it made for a better series overall. So I think having that idea, having that aspiration, wanting to reach up and try something even if you fail, I sound like a motivational speaker. I think that was a good thing, and I'm going with that as my play of the series.
No, very cool. I totally can get on board with that. I'm going for a very specific play for my play of the series, and that is the few minutes in Fugitive of the Jadoon from them arriving at the lighthouse, going through, discovering the fire alarm button that's got the Gallifreyan writing. Then you cut to the Doctor discovering the TARDIS buried underneath the ground, Ruth coming in and saying, "I'm the Doctor," and then going into that console room. That whole sequence just had me on the edge of my seat, squealing like a fan. It sits in my mind as just being this wow moment. Iconic imagery, brilliantly acted, perfectly put together. I think that of everything in this series, that is the bit that's just going to sit in fandom's memory, and indeed the general public's memory, and kind of define it, because it could not have been done in a more perfect way, in my view, and it was just a wonderful revelation that just flew open the series, and was really exciting.
Yeah, when that bit of sandy earth is pulled away and the police box sign is there and the light is lit.
Yeah.
It's one of those moments where I'm like, wow, you know, that's okay, what's going on? I'm on board. Yeah, that was good.
So I'll keep going with my foul of the series, and I've already discussed it at length. I'm giving it to The Lone Cyberman, because I just don't think that the potential was there remotely landed to have something built up so epically, to have a really good performance and an interesting idea in who this character was, giving him an army of Cybermen, and then it all kind of ending with the Master telling him he's a bit rubbish and just killing him and no one cares. I just thought, what a letdown. What a waste of an opportunity. And that, to me, is my foul.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. My foul, Dave, we had a listener. Do you remember Millie on Facebook who said we should fight more on the show?
I do, yes.
I picked something which could be our first brawl, Dave.
Okay.
Because my foul is, well, let me rewind a bit. When Sacha Dhawan first appeared, I said, look, he was played so well before the big reveal that he was the Master, but then he got a bit dancy and spinny and a bit silly. And I said, I hope he doesn't go down that path. And you said, he might not. He's just excited in the moment. You know, he's tricked the Doctor, and he's excited. I said, okay, all right, Dave, that's good. We get him returning, and he is basically, I'm going to say this, he is a cut-price Joker. He's in the purple outfit, the checks. He's just acting like a buffoon. And I know you said earlier this episode you loved it, so I thought, oh God, we're going to fight at the end of this episode. Won't that be terrible? I just thought, oh my God, they've let the Master go silly again. When on earth are we just going to get a malevolent, cold, hard bastard back as the Master? You know, because it just reinforces this thing to modern New Who audiences that this is how the Master is. He's just like, you know, I'm crazy, me. Can we just please have a normal Master, please and thank you, amen.
Look, I do disagree, and I'm sure you're not shocked to hear that. I get why you feel that way. I totally do. I don't think you're saying anything like, well, gee, you know, Rob didn't take his pills this morning. The Master, I think, does reflect the times in which he's set. Delgado is of the 70s, without any doubt. Ainley is a villain of the 80s, you know, big, bombastic, loud. He's an 80s Master. Sim, when he comes along, he's like that sort of, you know, end of the Blair years, end of the Bush years, slightly corrupt, slightly sinister, slightly unpleasant, slightly barking. Like, he's of his time. And I think you're right in that Sacha Dhawan is a cut-price Joker, but that is where we are in drama today. Like, he's pulling from what is a villain in 2020 pop culture and reflecting that. And I think that's what the Master does. I never found it over the top. I never found it silly. It, to me, was the right side of bonkers. But it is one of those things, like the Cyberlord's costume, which you found like the right side of bonkers. I found it the wrong side and therefore silly. You know, it's a very fine line, and it's different with everybody, this sort of thing. What clearly fell the wrong side of the line for you fell the right side of the line for me. I think Sacha Dhawan was amazing. On my flight back to Australia, one of the movies I watched for the fifth or sixth time was The History Boys, which is a brilliant movie, let me say.
It is.
But watching Sacha Dhawan in that, now knowing that he would go on to play the Master, and just the intensity of that performance and some of the looks he gives his teachers and other students, I see that in there, and I think that underneath all of the Joker-like stuff of Dhawan's performance, there is always those eyes looking at you, powerful, malevolent. I don't think that ever leaves him. So whilst I totally get that didn't land for you, I fundamentally disagree with your assessment.
Just speaking of The History Boys, can we get Sam Barnett as the 13th Doctor and have him up against Sacha? Would that be fun?
Oh, that would be amazing. And we'll bring Russell Tovey back as well.
Fantastic. Look, I see everything you're saying, and I should say that I do think Sacha Dhawan is a very good actor, and the performance he's giving is right for what he's trying to do. I think my problem is the Master seems to have been going down this path for a while, and although it might be following the times, it is making him or her seem a bit one note's probably not the right term, but going in that direction more so than the Delgado days. And maybe if the Master had been more Delgado-ish and then became a Sacha Dhawan, I'd say, oh, this is really different. This is really bizarre. I like it. You know, so it's maybe not what the performance is doing, but how I see it fitting into Who overall and how it's skewing, to my mind, the Master's character.
Yeah, I totally understand your argument. I just don't agree. That's as violent as our fights get, I'm afraid.
Yeah, apologies, Millie. So,
Rob, we're now up to our player of the season. I've just reached across my desk and pulled off a 10 new shekels coin. I'm going to ask heads or tails to see who goes first. So, Rob, heads or tails?
Tails never fails, Dave.
And it is heads, so I'm going first.
Okay.
My player of the series is Chris Chibnall.
Ooh, wow.
And I'm just saying that because at the end of last series, there was some extreme criticism of the show. There was some love of the show. But in the middle of it, I detected a very large, homogenous amount of feedback about the show, which is we kind of like it. We think Jodie's got a lot of potential. We like the cast of the companions. But it lacks excitement. It lacks adventure. It lacks explosions. It lacks monsters. And it doesn't quite feel Who-ish enough. I feel like Chibnall has taken all of that comment, well-meant constructive criticism, and he has taken it on board in a really professional manner. He has fine-tuned the show. He has written the Doctor in a stronger and better manner. He has given us more excitement. He has given us more adventure. He's given us more monsters. He's made it feel more Doctor Who-like. He has written a more enjoyable series, and I think that is in the middle solid mass of sensible fandom. I think that's a very universally held view, that all those things are better, that the series has been better. And for Chibnall to do that, I think is a big deal. I think he deserves the kudos for it. I asked him to do it at the end of the last series. He's delivered. So I think it is appropriate to award him with my player of the series.
Okay. He's doing it though, Dave, but still making some fundamental mistakes from the previous series.
He's not perfect, but I think it was big enough to note and highlight. So, look, I take it from that comment that he's not your pick.
No snaps.
Who is?
I found this really hard to answer because obviously a one-off performance would have to really stand out for that to be my pick, and that's not going to happen, Segun Akinola, I don't think we've even mentioned his music hardly at all during our takes. True. So it really starts to cut things down to be basically the TARDIS team or Chris Chibnall. I don't think even any one particular writer stood out to me. perhaps the writer of Villa Diodati, because that was her first script, but that would be a bit of a stretch. So I found this honestly, genuinely very hard to answer. Again, I gave Chris Chibnall a MVP during the series, but I don't think he deserved it overall. I went, and this will seem so cliche, if you're on the edge of your seat, please sit back comfortably. I'm giving it to Bradley Walsh. I just think across the series, Bradley was still the best actor, even though his role became more and more cliche as time went on. And I think from that first series where he was the breakout star, the writers were like, "Oh, we need a funny line, give it to Bradley." And as you were saying earlier, we need the solemn and somber moment, give it to Bradley. He'll do that well. So he's become almost cliche, and I'm kind of happy that he's going and not hanging around for a third series, because I think he's done, and I hope he has a really good exit at the end of the year. But for this series, I still think he was the best actor in it, and for that reason, he is my almost default player of the series, because I still don't think any of them really jumped up to be counted across the board. In certain episodes, yes, and in certain scenes, particularly some of the Jodie scenes, just amazing. Across the board, though, Bradley Walsh for me.
Look, I totally understand why you've gone there. I agree that Bradley Walsh has consistently done extremely good things with the material he's given. And frankly, he's done extremely good things with the even more limited material I think he's been given this year. So definitely worthy of praise. I'm going to give a one-sentence honourable mention, though, to Vinay Patel, who has now written probably my favourite episode of 2 seasons in a row.
That's right. Yeah, Vinay, of course.
So I didn't think it was a big enough contribution to this season to be player of the series, but
no,
he could be player of the year so far.
Vinay for showrunner.
Vinay, wow, that's a thought. That's a bandwagon I could maybe get on.
Very good, Dave. That wraps up series 12. Can you believe we're here finally? I can't believe that it's only mid-March and we're here. That's just weird. Yeah. And we've got a year and a half until the next series.
But yeah, I go from doing our first hot take, where I've sat there and gone, wow, 10 more weeks of this. Like I love doing it, but the not the pressure, but just finding the time every week. We've got to watch the show, talk about the show. You've got to edit it. You look down the barrel and you go, wow, it's going to be a long 3 months. But we're here, and it's been fun.
Yeah, I guess listeners don't always think about logistics, but I'm sitting there, it's midday on a Monday, and I'm watching the episode at lunchtime, then thinking about going to the gym after work, then when will I hook up with Dave tonight to record the show? It's a pressure at sometimes.
Yeah, and look, quite often I've been taking my recording equipment into the office and waiting for everybody else to go home, so I can just sit there rather than battling traffic and not getting home till late and doing it. I even took the recording equipment up to Canberra one time, so that's the effort we go to make these things turn out.
The glamour of podcasting.